Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Fatal Contact, a Hong Kong action flick from 2006 that stars Wu Jing. Now, I was a big fan of this movie back in the day. I remember liking it a lot, but it has been a while since I've seen it, so I thought to myself, why not give it another watch and see if it holds up, and then do a review. So that's what I'm doing. A young martial art national champion comes to Hong Kong on a short contract with a Chinese opera group, but is lured into the underground, all-contact boxing world by a small-time gambling boss. He makes an immediate impression, so a rival crime boss seeks out fighters to compete against him. With the stakes raised and the matches becoming more and more dangerous, can our protagonist survive long enough to make a fortune? So the story in Fatal Contact, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. The scriptwriters do focus on the story as much as the action, which is commendable, but I do think the character development is kind of basic overall. The main theme is how a good-natured man can be influenced to participate in shady practices. He's kind of gullible. The most important side character is actually played by Mickey Young, because she influences our main character in how he exerts his power and who he directs it towards. Those are kind of like the main themes. I also like Ronald Chang in the role of Captain. He's lively and engaging to watch, and there are a few funny scenes involving him to enjoy in an otherwise serious film. But I think above all else, I give this movie credit for having some balls. It does go places dramatically that I was not expecting. It does bite off a bit more than it can chew, making it feel a little bit on the shallow side. And the focus of the drama does create a feeling of anticlimax late in the film. The final shot is also kind of cheesy. But I did gasp in surprise at some of the stuff that happens in this film, dramatically. So although the script writing is nothing great, it still contributes some positive aspects to the movie, in my opinion. Now, in terms of action, what we get is mostly satisfying. There's a bit of wire work that's used to accentuate some of the kicks and jumps, and it is distracting at times, but not a deal breaker for me. Wu Jing is a talented martial artist, and he does get to show some of his goods in Fatal Contact. As early as the opening credit sequence, he's allowed to showcase some of his weapon skills and acrobatics. But it does take about 20 plus minutes for this movie to start introducing bits of action to it. There's a few very short fights. And then the first, legit fight that lasts more than a minute is actually a street fight. And it shows up at about, the 30-minute mark. It's good, some neat little maneuvers. I quite liked the weapon disarming tactics in that scene. There were some pretty neat moves. The first, legit underground fighting match that lasts at least a minute or two involves Wu Jing versus a big Caucasian dude. Another good scene. I always like watching fights involving wildly different fighting styles. The big dude has a power advantage, Wu Jing has a speed advantage, right? Then the second big underground fighting match is probably the best scene of the entire film. It's a 3-on-3 battle in a boat dock area. A few tactics include a slippery gel to make the opponent's job difficult at grappling and hitting. And there's also a very painful looking weapon tactic that's used. It still makes me wince every time I see it. And then Andy On shows up in this scene as a cameo, and he kind of steals the show with some pretty awesome exchanges of unedited back and forth strikes during his fight with Wu Jing. I would say Fatal Contact and Do Police Story were the movies that made me a fan of Andy On, and when you go back and watch them, you can see why. The dude's got talent, and he can move. And the fact that he's working with Wu Jing here makes the boat dock battle sufficiently exciting at times, too. So it's very precisely choreographed and executed, and I enjoy it quite a bit. And then the third big fight is a solid one-on-one scene. In it's almost like a fancy bar restaurant area that they kind of clear out and they do for one of these fights. Nothing fantastic, but it's filmed and nicely performed. So obviously, if you're reading between the lines, my biggest criticism regarding the action is that the length of the fights is problematic. Since most of them are bite-sized scenes, You know what I mean? Especially early on. You know, you think it's going to kick into high gear, and then fight lasts like 30 seconds or something. So, yeah, a lot of the fights are like small bite-sized fights, with the exception of the 3 that I just mentioned. And there's no climactic fight at the end of the movie. None. Like 0. So the film chooses to go for more like a dramatic climax instead. And it does take away a little bit from the action, because we don't get that big climax fight that we want. So I think my final verdict is that I did probably over-appreciate this movie back in the day. It's not as awesome as I remember, but I still do enjoy it. It's got some good action in it. All right, Wu Jing is good as always. You got some entertaining side characters. The plot moves along quickly enough, you know, and there are some bits of the story that I think work and are interesting to see. I would not classify this as like a must-see martial arts flick, but if you're a big fan of Wu Jing, check it out. I mean, there's a chance you're going to like it. It's currently available on streaming and physical media. And as always, I will see you next time.